I'm Stan Smith, and I'm here with Penelope Trunk, who's the CEO of Brazen Careerist. Welcome, Penelope.
Thanks, Stan.
Well, today let's talk about what we expect to talk about, which is Gen Y or millennials. But first, I keep hearing, look, we're in the middle of a recession. Why do we even care what people think? Whether they're boomers, Xers, Yers, Zers, who cares? We got to hunker down and get to work. What do you say to people who say that?
That there's still a really high churn rate and it's really expensive, so if people want to keep their costs down, they'll keep their churn rate down by keeping people in the workforce happy. I mean, I think young people are still going to leave their job if the job's terrible, and it's still going to be really expensive for employers.
You talk to a lot of CEOs about generational issues. What's the biggest blind spot that you find CEOs have about this whole topic?
I think that they don't know how to motivate older people to accommodate younger people. I think in general, CEOs can look at the bottom line and see that if they don't get better at recruiting and retaining young talent, that it's just going to cost them too much money. But it's motivating all the stakeholders that's so difficult.
Well, how would you say, they say there were stakeholders in this room, how would you motivate them? I mean, because we use the word accommodation or whatever, and that certainly sets a lot of baby boomers off when they say, well, why are we accommodating these young people and so forth. But interested in your views of how do you talk to stakeholders like that who don't get it?
Well, I think actually Deloitte does something really interesting, the way you shift the workplace not just to accommodate young people, but to accommodate everyone. So you could put a lens on that says the workplace has to change because young people are so demanding. Or you could put a lens on that says we're all so lucky that the workplace is changing, now everybody benefits. And I think if you put that second lens on, and you can even, I mean, Deloitte has a great program, that whole lattice idea,
Sure.
where baby boomers have climbed and climbed and climbed the ladder, and they feel totally ripped off right now that nobody else is paying attention to the ladder. So if you shift and give just young people a new option, then it's a complete ripoff for the older people. But if you shift and give everybody a new option, and it's a new day for everyone, then I think it's easier to get buy-in. And I think the thing that young people want is for work to be meaningful and to hit their core values, and they want to help people just in terms of kindness and accommodation. And we can all do that for each other. We don't have to just do it for young people. And if you kind of explain to older people that now we could have this kind of workplace and it's actually the kind of workplace they've always wanted, it becomes this great, like, touchy-feely greatness moment, and they're so lucky to be a part of it.
So you're saying that customization is the link that pulls together the generations, that we're all ultimately looking for that customized workplace.
Yeah, I think, and I think Deloitte customizes it in the metaphor of how do you climb and how do you structure your career. But you can also customize it in terms of what your values are, or, I mean, there are a million different ways, I think, to look at customization.
The Xers are caught in between right now, and they feel that the many boomers have gone soft on the millennials because they're their kids.
Right,
and the Xers have to supervise the Ys. They have to get the work done, and they're not getting support from the baby boomers.
Yeah.
Do you see that as a possibility of what's going on right now?
Yeah, I do, but I think Generation X, you know, in that mix, I think Generation X are the real revolutionaries because they have nothing to lose. I mean, they make no money relative to their parents, and they had none of the support that Generation Y did. And in general, I think Generation X is kind of the one that blasts down doors and gets no credit for it. So I think...
Well, give me an example of doors they blast down.
They built the internet, but they made no money at it. So the baby boomers invested all the money, Generation X built it, and then Generation X got stupid little stock options, and the baby boomers cashed out. That's
and
a great
so what
example.
about the Ys?
Great example.
What about the...
I have another example.
Oh,
Do you want
give it
another?
to me, please, please.
That Generation X walked into work in jeans and a t-shirt and said we're not doing suits, and then they got called slackers and got underpaid because of it. And now Obama, and you know, like, now it's really hip to go to work and be dressed down, but Generation Y gets credit for it.
Well, so how do we deal with this? Because there is a schism here between the X's and the Y's, or am I dreaming?
Yeah, I think the big problem at the workplace is nobody likes Generation X. I say that as an Xer.
So it's
Yeah, I think everyone else probably is getting along much better with each other. But I think Generation X is the one that actually changes things. I mean, Generation X is we're the ones that we're the ones that crashed through the glass ceiling and like actually took care of our kids while we did it. Or we're the ones who invented stay-at-home dads, and we're the ones who we changed how people do startup funding. We changed how people do startups. We changed how people do freelancing. So I think maybe Generation X doesn't care that much that people don't like them.
You recently in a blog talked about going to college as, let's say you're losing your job and you say, I'll go to college and wait this thing out. You said it was basically buying into a deteriorating dream. What do you mean by that?
Well, I think that graduate school used to be a way to kind of assure yourself some sort of stability. And that's kind of what I was talking about before, that Generation X and Generation Y don't really believe ever that there's going to be stability. So there's this aura of shock right now that everyone who bought into the idea that there's stability is now finding themselves completely unstable because of the economy. But there's only a small sector of the demographic span that actually bought into stability. So Generation X and Generation Y, if they're not believing that there's stability in the workplace and they're not believing that there's continuity, then the whole idea of investing 4 years in a graduate degree is completely over-investing in one career because it's not going to be a stable career. And so the whole idea of graduate school, I think, really needs to shift to acknowledge that we're in a very unstable, very quickly shifting workplace. And until we can do that, graduate school isn't really worth it. And there's really interesting stuff going on in the MBA programs where they're taking women younger because it's not even worth it to women to graduate from college, spend the time in working, then go to get an MBA, and then get out of the MBA program and start working because they want to have kids. And the whole thing isn't set up to stop and have kids. And so Harvard and University of Pennsylvania are taking the women in earlier so that they can try to have the women get some impact in their career out of that degree. And to me, it's so dramatic that they had to shift their admissions process and to try to help people get some value out of that degree. That's how devalued these graduate degrees are.
Well, let me follow up on something interesting. We did some work with 20-somethings, asked them who are leaders already, either running their own companies or not-for-profits. One of the things that came out of these 35 or so people that we interviewed was that, maybe it was 40, because only 10%, 4 of them were married. And nobody had children. And furthermore, the ones, the remaining 36 or something, were not even in relationships for the most part. And the interesting discussion was the uncertainty that they saw in the future, and a dichotomy that was growing, that men said, we can wait to have children. Of course, women cannot. And there was some discussion about how that was affecting the dynamics of careers.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, I don't think the women are going to compromise in the children department. I think Generation X has been a train wreck putting off having children, and so many women have had fertility problems, and there's just too much written about how you can't wait to have kids. You can't wait till you're 35 to start having kids. It's ridiculous. And so I don't think Generation Y is waiting. They just, if you ask most women, they say they want to be having kids by the time they're 30. If they want to be having kids by the time they're 30, they need to be married when they're 28. If they want to be married by their 28, they need to be looking for the guy when they're 26. And there's a really complicated point there because they also need to be figuring out their career when they're 26.
Yeah, it's interesting to me now from a generational point of view that there seems to be less of the stereotyping among Generation Y. But I wonder if that...
What do you mean?
In terms of, they work very well in teams, and all that together. But, yet we still have the need to, there's still differences. And so my summing up question here is, we've had a very wide-ranging discussion, but if there was one thing that you wanted to tell millennials that they need to know about the life and the future as you see it, what would you tell them?
To stay sunny and optimistic, and don't let anyone tell them that they're too arrogant or self-confident. You can never be too self-confident. It's so fun. They think they can do anything. I love watching it.
Right. Well, thank you, Penelope.
Thanks.